Hi there, my name is Tom and I love wrenching on cars. I like all kinds of cars, but prefer turbocharged ones. I've been posting up build stories on my website for a long time, but now I'm trying something new, video. Today we're finishing up work on my turbo Miata, but before we get started, let's take a look at how we got here. In the last episode, we covered my history with this roadster and detailed its transformation from a humble weekend cruiser to a 250 horsepower turbocharged beast that has some real performance chops. But there were some areas that needed attention, namely the failure-prone stock differential. The beefy, upgraded Torsen rear end and associated parts you see here were generously donated from a newer Miata, and to complement the package, we installed some polyurethane differential mounts from Energy Suspension. But like any good car project, there were some speed bumps. Specifically, an incredibly stuck axle and seized PPF bolt in the diff. But hopefully the worst is behind us. Alright, our first job is to get that stuck PPF mounting bolt out of its rusty home. After prying out this small bushing, I grabbed my cutoff wheel and sliced this crusty 20-year-old bolt in half. That did the trick and allowed the stock differential to be finally removed for good. From there, removing the old bolt from the PPF was easy. I just unscrewed it. Next, I took a moment and cleaned up the PPF with some degreaser and a Scotch-Brite pad. It looked like new. The next job was to get the stock rubber off of the lower differential mounts in order to reinstall them with the new Energy Suspension units in their place. This is a fun job, where you get to burn something to a crisp. Just a note, the instructions say to heat up the mount to the point of smoking, and the rubber will just peel off, but mine needed to be much hotter for the rubber to come off. Like, let's have a good old down-home diff mount barbecue hot. So this is what you're left with. A fairly clean steel bracket for the new mount to rest in, and this, a pile of smelly molten rubber, which gave me an idea. After my snack, I was ready to tackle the next job, cleaning the burnt rubber remains off of the lower mounting bracket. A wire wheel made quick work of this. After those were cleaned up, I sprayed some low-gloss black paint on them, and on the differential too. Oh, and don't accidentally paint your wife's cat. Sorry there, buddy. Okay, this is the dangerous part of having a lift. Now that the car was at eye level, my dirty undercarriage was bothering me. And Mama always told me to keep my undercarriage clean. Just look at this mess. So while I was in the detailing mood, I gathered a few good brushes, some painter's tape, the degreaser, and some cheap semi-gloss black spray paint and went to work. The first step was to clean out as much dirt as possible with a dry brush. Next, I got the hub out of the way. Oh, hold on a sec, I'm about to rock out.
Yeah! Come on!
Next, I soaked the suspension parts with degreaser and gave everything a good brushing. I even used my toothbrush, which is a great tool for getting into tight spots. That said, it's best to use an old toothbrush. After everything was clean, I masked off the outer wheel well and laid down the black spray paint. You don't have to be precise, just hit the visible areas well. One coat should do it. Then it was time to raise the new differential in place. To finish installing the assembly, the lower bushings first need to be covered in lube. From there, they rest on the mounting brackets and get bolted in place. You know you've used enough lube if you get these. Next, I grabbed the shiny PPF and bolted it in. Last time we worked on the car, the driver's side axle was stuck in the hub. Rather than fight with that, I picked up these newer hubs at a great price. After giving them a quick coat of paint, I bolted them up and then slid the new axles in. From there, I snugged the axle to the hub. I'll tighten it to the proper torque spec later. Oh, and here's a quick tip. If you have some little to-dos that you don't want to forget, just write them down on a piece of painter's tape and stick it to the car. Next, I filled the rear with Redline gear oil. I didn't have a way to attach a hose to the bottle, so I threaded an old brass fitting into the lid. Worked great! The last step of the diff install was bolting up the drive shaft, and then reinstalling the exhaust. So we're done, right? Well... Any good car guy knows the danger of the phrase, "while I was in there." It usually means more time and money will be spent than expected. Well, that's what happened here. While I was in there, working on the diff, I decided to upgrade my brakes. I wasn't ready to go overboard with a larger rotor caliper setup just yet, so I instead followed the example of many Miata owners and got some good replacement rotors, better pads, and new brake lines. For rotors, I got a great closeout deal on these factory replacement Brembo units. They were fine right out of the box, but I wanted to keep them from turning into a rusty mess, so I painted the rotor hat high heat black. Here's how that turned out. There are many great performance brake pads for the Miata, but the fine folks from Flying Miata recommended these Porterfield R4S sport pads, and that is good enough for me. They're ideal for street-driven cars that will see some mild track use. That fits my needs perfectly, and they'll be a big upgrade over the stock ones that I was running all these years. I also got their braided stainless steel brake line kit to increase braking power and improve pedal feel. I got all of my tools and parts together and got to it. A disc brake job is a great DIY project, as it's straightforward work that can be accomplished with simple tools. Just take your time, follow your instructions, and before you know it, you'll have a new set of brakes and we'll have saved some cash too. Next was swapping out the 20-year-old stock rubber brake lines for the new braided stainless ones. Oh, I also painted the calipers while I was in there. This is also a simple job, but will require you to bleed the air out of the brakes. For this job, you'll either need a self-bleeding kit, or you can recruit a friend for free. I chose my black-striped buddy here. Luckily, he'd forgiven me for hitting him up with that racing stripe. Good kitty. Starting with the wheel furthest from the master cylinder, ask your helper in the car to pump the brakes to build pressure, and then hold the pedal while you release the air at the caliper. I just use an old jar like this one, with a clear hose so I can see when all the air has been bled out. Our brake upgrade is done. Not only will we have much better performance, but look how a little time and attention to detail paid off. Just compare it to what we started with. With the drivetrain and brake work done, I bolted on the wheels and got the car back on the ground. There was one little task left to do: freshen up the shifter. I pulled out the console and unbolted the old damaged shift boot. Here's the old shifter parts compared to the new ones. This is a simple modification that makes a nice little improvement in the cabin. Before we go for our first test ride, it was time to bed in our new brake pads. The experts at Flying Miata sent along these great instructions, which I followed to a T. After letting the brakes cool off, it was time to go for a ride. Okay, we're going for our first ride here in the Turbo Miata with the new rear diff and the rear diff bushings and the brakes. Now, I'd read, reviews and things saying that the diff bushings, since they are a lot stiffer than the stock rubber ones that were in there, that they transmit some vibration and feel through the cabin, and I'm definitely hearing it and feeling it. But I gotta tell you, it doesn't seem like a bad thing. It's not like what solid motor mounts gives you, or something real obtrusive and that you feel through the wheel. It's something, I'm just kind of hearing more of what's going on with the rear differential. Right now I'm in fourth, and I'm just kind of cruising through these turns. And before, I'd be into fifth, back down into fourth, into fifth. And with a little more gear now, I can just sort of ride these turns out without having to, shift up and down and up and down. And I'm on some pretty tight turns here. It's nice, you can get more speed in the gears. And it's a little less wild, a little less wheel spin that I'm noticing. That's a plus. This thing would get really out of hand when you were hustling through the curves and you had that shorter gear ratio. It was just all over the place, kind of scary. Okay, now let's run it through the gears a little bit. Well, I'm definitely liking that. You can tell that taller gear, it's doing its thing for sure. It's far less frantic. I used to get a ton of wheel spin in first gear and even some in second. And now you can definitely tell you're getting a lot more pull in each gear, and that feels pretty good. All right, now we're doing a little highway test, driving down the interstate, and we're in fifth gear, going about 70 miles an hour. Feels so much better than it did before. It's not buzzing along, and with the RPMs way up there, it's amazing that a few hundred RPMs would make such a difference, but it does, especially with a little car like this, where you're basically sitting on the motor. All right, so let's break this stuff down. The rear diff, I'm definitely liking it. It suits the turbo engine much better, the broader power band, so that's a plus. Definitely great for the shooting through the mountain roads around here, and less shifting, less frantic, in second and third gear, less wheel spin, the rear end's not moving around as much. That's a huge plus. Now the diff mounts, stiffer, yes, you're going to hear more stuff that's going on in the rear, but on the plus side, the shifting does feel better, especially in between gears, when you're really slamming it. And when I'm taking off from a stop, there's less of that sort of lurching and jumping that I used to get. As for the brakes, massive improvement. I have the stock rubber lines and just probably stock replacement pads and rotors, and it feels far better now than it did before. Much better pedal feel, and when you hit the brake, it actually stops now, which before it would sort of ease to a stop. Which is the last thing you want when you're flying around these mountain roads, right? What's that? Yeah, it's a 92 Miata. No, I'm not a hairstylist. No, it's not my wife's car. It's my car. Yeah, no. Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, girls usually do drive these. That's true. It's funny because it's true. Okay, all right. Yep. Thanks for watching. I'd really like your comments on what we should do to Old Sunflower next. Short of a jet engine swap, I'm open to anything, so tell me what you think. We've got some track visits for the Talon and Miata coming soon, so be sure to watch for those. So with that said, thanks again folks, see you next time.